So welcome everyone. I know we have parents in the audience, so dear parents, I want to welcome you and I want to tell you that working with the pediatric population, it's awesome, but that means you gotta deal with the parents. So I have a very profound admiration for parents of children that have special needs. I learned to never underestimate the gut feeling of the parents. And what also amazes me is that traveling around the world and working with children from the whole world, there is one common point with all those children. It's what a parent is capable of doing for the love of their children, for the desire, the instinctive, the deep desire of making anything possible for their children. So it's a very privileged place to work with parents like this. And I think some of you are also therapists, and we all feel this, that when you have a parent in front of you that is so desperate to help their little ones, it just gives you wings. It just you say, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. So welcome, dear parents. Then this lecture is not only designed for parents, but it is also for you professionals that are on the first line working with babies. And it is, maybe we don't even realize how important it is for us to have this knowledge to guide properly the journey, the track of those babies. And the point here of this lecture is to do this as soon as possible. And we're going to redefine what early intervention means. So, welcome to you, and professionals is a big umbrella word, because truly the work that we're about to talk is truly attracting a lot of different professions. You have physiotherapists, you have occupational therapists, speech therapists, feeding therapists, psychologists, nurses, chiropractor, and many other teachers, educator, and so on. So this is for you. All right, so before I go to the heart of the matter.
So if you want to use the microphone, you just turn it on, and so it's recorded, it's really loud and clear.
Okay.
Would you like
you
to
think
do
it's
that?
necessary for me to hold the microphone? Edit this part.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for you to know a little bit about myself, I am Isabelle Renard-Fontaine. I'm a physical therapist. I have my master's degree in Europe, and I got specialized with working with infant and newborn. And this is like for a long time ago. I think I was 8 years old, and I had a little sister, and I could spend hours just watching a baby move. It was something that I've always felt. And then being a physiotherapist, it gave me this chance to truly live out of my passion on a daily basis, because as a physio you can specialize and then become. So I worked for over 25 years now in a center, outpatient-based center at a hospital. Pediatric means 0 to 18 years of age, but then I became specialized in NICU, Neonatal intensive care unit. So now you're working with even before the full-term gestation with the infant. And it's amazing to be at the beginning of life, because those babies are teaching you the most. When the topic is reflex, I mean, how closer to the origin of reflex you can be when you work with babies that are not even fully developed. So I'm very grateful for those babies that are teaching the essence of reflexes. Everything is more expressed in infant, so this is how you get the really true picture. And then I also love water, and when you combine water and reflex, it's becoming aquatic MNRI reflex together. And that makes it even more powerful, because we all know that reflexes are truly emerging and starting the development journey in utero, which is aquatic environment. So can you imagine? And they come on Earth, they have this brutal adjustment to make, and you're like, can we bring them back in this environment to help this transition? Amazing thing. truly. Okay, so as far as the MNRI education here, this is not showing. Okay, I have to click here. Course specialist, instructor. This is not so relevant to this lecture, but for you to know, those are the classes that I'm teaching. What I want to point out here, you see introduction to intronaut and infant reflex. And what is an intronaut? This is a baby that's not born yet. So the program of Dr. Masgutova has application for unborn baby. When we talk about early intervention, you get where we want to go. This is like starting before the baby. And we're working on those unborn baby through the mom that's carrying the baby. But it's double impact here because you have the benefit for the unborn baby, the intronaut, and the benefit for the mother. What is it like? You throw one stone and you hit two targets at the same time. So then you see the aqua reflex is another program of the Masgutova. Those are other areas that I'm involved in, and you can always check the website. But we have what we call the Minds Group for Research Science, a very interesting group of lecturers, and we're presenting on different topics. This was on a monthly basis, became every other month, and huge variety of topics. We went from topics by diagnosis, what you need to know about cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, infant. We had a series on motor development, not just motor, but feeding, speech development. We have special guests sometimes. We had, for example, a dentist that talked about the tongue and lips ties. We had lactation people coming, and we're welcoming any expert for any type of topic. So good to know. You can attend the lectures live, or you register and you can buy the lecture and have access to it for a limited period of time later. Dr. Masgutova launched a program. This is family conferences and clinics. And then we're trying, because you know the importance for the pediatrician to be aware of this. But pediatricians may not have the opportunity to follow the whole path of becoming MNRI specialists. So the idea was to create a sort of a shortcut for pediatricians, for doctors, for PhDs, to get the knowledge that's like so important, but still not having to learn all the techniques, because pediatricians obviously may not work with their hands, but they still have to make the proper recommendation. Okay, and then I want to say one word about the Masgutova Graduate School, MGS. This is another huge part of our organization. Was a big envision from Dr. Masgutova and her son, Dennis, who had always imagined this school where you go, you follow all the education, different levels, from the beginning to the end, hopefully with a PhD program. And once you finish this, you have a master degree of science in reflex integration.
NeuroDevelopment.
In reflex neurodevelopment. Yes. So, pretty amazing things, and we are running for now about a year, a little bit over a year, and you want to check the website of MGS to have all the information at this moment. Scholarships are offered, valuable information that you can find. Okay, so for you that are not so familiar with the MNRI, you just have to know that this is a very international organization, and Dr. Masgutova and her team have been pretty much in every part of the world. So this is like some of the country that we have, and you can see all the continents are pretty much covered. So that means that course specialists are formed everywhere, and the idea, the long term, is to really being able to offer this kind of intervention to every individuals that need this around the world. Okay, here we go. MNRI, Masgutova neurosensory motor reflex integration. So I will go pretty briefly, just for you to know what we're talking about, but the person behind this, the creator of the program, is Dr. Isabelle Masgutova. She's the founder and creator of the method, and she is here tonight with us. It is always a great privilege, a great honor to have Dr. Masgutova with us, because she travels all over the world, and when she's around, we have so much to earn and gain from her. We also have another very important person that is a pillar of this organization, and it's Pamela Curley, the co-founder. So can you imagine we have the two of you with us? That's something special for sure. Okay, so I didn't want to take the time tonight to talk too much about Dr. Masgutova, because we could have a lecture about her accomplishment and everything. You are very welcome to visit the website. You're going to find everything about Dr. Masgutova and how she developed it. So fascinating to understand the process behind this method. And it started with dealing with trauma, really, because Dr. Masgutova has her background in psychology and trauma intervention. Okay, so the topic is about reflex, and again here I'm going to go fast to give you a general idea, but there are many classes and lectures about what reflex are. Here, the key word I want you to pay attention to is that a reflex is the unit of the nervous system. That means that we have an impact. When we work with reflex, we're impacting the nervous system. It is also a unit of neurodevelopment. This is a big concept with MNRI. Neurodevelopment means development in multiple areas, like whether it's motor, cognitive, behavior, emotional, vision, all the different possible area, language, feeding skills, and so on. And a reflex is a unit of the sensory, motor, integration. All those words have a very important meaning here. Okay, so why you who are PT, OT, speech, educators, teachers, physicians, nurses, why do you need to know how to work with reflexes? Because of the tasks that reflexes are fulfilling. And if you look at the 4 bubbles in yellow, reflexes are key components of human development. That's it. That's enough to say, hey, what is this thing? Because we are all interested in human neurodevelopment. And you parents, it is the same thing. Don't you want your baby, your child, to go through the most optimal neurodevelopment? Reflexes are essential to survive. Every single baby in the world is given by nature reflexes. And the mission of a newborn baby is to survive first and then to protect themselves. So that's why the universe created any human being with reflexes. It's like natural gift. And then reflexes are neurological building blocks. And when you hear building blocks, you can imagine a wall where you put one block after the other to build something big, strong, and supportive. Reflexes are a foundation for abilities and skills milestone. I will just tell you a bit more about this. All right, so just maybe focus on the image, because images are more explanatory sometimes, but I said first it is about surviving and being born. This is why sometimes it's a misunderstanding that reflex develop or emerge after birth.
this is a misunderstanding of how reflexes are, because the reflex need to be there in order for a baby to be born. If a baby does not have proper reflex development before being born, the birth process will be tricky, will be challenging. So they need to be born and then survive right after this. And then the reflex will go through a long journey. And we'll talk about this, but they are definitely not disappearing. This is the big message that we want you to walk away after this lecture, to understand that reflexes do not disappear. Very commonly, when you talk about reflex, you're thinking about babies, but it is not limited to babies. We can definitely talk about reflex for older children, teenagers, adults, and even elderly population. But who would think that a doctor specializing in geriatric would even talk about reflex or consider to look at reflex? It's a misunderstanding, because in literature you will see that very commonly reflexes are disappearing after the first year of life. So why would a neurologist that deals with adults think too much about reflexes? Okay, so this is about here. This is another definition about what are reflexes. I just want you to really look at that word. A genetic pattern. Genetic pattern. So why do I really stop there? Because if a reflex has to do with genetic, and if there is a method that works with reflex, it means that if we have a genetic condition, we can do something about it. So I'm a physiotherapist in school, university, top level. We're taught that if there is a genetic condition, you're born with it and you're gonna die with it, and this is for you, with you, all your life. And there is no possibility to modify or modulate genetic. But after this lecture, you understand that working with reflexes, we can change reflexes. A baby may not have the proper reflex. You work with the baby, and then you have a proper reflex response. And a reflex is a genetic code. That means there is something to do about genetic. At the end of the lecture, I will show you a video of a baby with a very well-known genetic disorder that shows big pathology with reflexes. You work with the method of Dr. Masgutova, and the reflex shows closer to norm response. Okay, so what we want to do, sure, MNRI is not claiming that we can solve and cure all genetic disorder. What we want to show is that even with a genetic disorder, there is significant, serious potential to extend the potential, the function and the skills and ability. It doesn't mean that you're condemned to stay within your genetic limitation. This is what we mean by have an impact on genetic disorder. So the work of Dr. Masgutova has been inspired and really influenced by many big names in the literature in terms of neurophysiology, scientists that worked with movements and so on. Lev Vygotsky is one of them. If you listen to our courses and lectures, and Dr. Masgutova cannot lecture without referring to those guys. And if you look at 1930, this was a long time ago. Those guys had understood something like a long time ago that may have been understood by the common public, but he was saying that the early infant movement do not disappear. And here we go again with this big discrepancy where in the literature, the common thought is that reflex disappear. In 1930, those guys have already understood that it is not. But what he says, they don't disappear, but they continue to work with higher formation of the brain. And then you have this word that came about integration. They integrates with higher function. I'm going in a simplified version because there is so much more depth into those concepts, but it's good enough to know when we work with the reflex. So here, and I have this for all the parents when I work with their children, I said, please look at the picture, make a mental picture, and remember this triangle. Triangle has 3 sides, 3 components. And this is a very beautiful, simple but profound symbol of a reflex circuit with 3 elements. And you have the sensory system, you have something happening at the brain level, and then the motor system. And they're all linked together. You have kind of an input with a processing and an output with this. And maybe as a physiotherapist, we have OTs with us and so on. We are trained to look at the sensory system. OTs knows very well about this, and they have tons of sensory integration methods and tools and so on, but they tend to also look at this in an isolated way. PTs, we love the motor pattern. If I have a limitation in my ankle, I'm going to go with the movement and restore the range of motion. But we cannot work one aspect of the triangle at a time because it is a wholeness, it's a circuit. So dear parents, have this in mind, and when you see us work with our hands, we are working. If I go and touch the baby's foot, I'm giving this sensory system. And then I'm going to expect a motor response because my sensory signal is going to reach the brain and result in a motor response. Okay, so the sensory, I think when my daughter was in 5th grade, they were learning about touch and vision and auditory. We know all this. I want to point out, don't forget, the olfactory, for example. This is something actually that comes first. The olfactory sense is one of the most ancient. If we have memory, the smell is a memory that we never forget. A baby smelling the breast milk for the first time in his life, it will be having an impact the whole entire life. Okay, so those are the type of stimulation. Proprioceptive also, this is more of a deeper pressure. And we have different receptors for this. And then the motor, yes, I press the foot, the toes are bending, that's motor. But you also have a postural response. If I have a baby up and I tilt the baby, oops, the head is going to, this is a postural response. We can have a reaction inside the ear, tympanic. The eyes, if I go close to you, do this, oh, your pupil will open, and this is a reflexive response. And then, very important here, glandular. Means that we can have a response with the hormone and the stress. And that is an element that is not commonly described in literature. This aspect of the emotional response. Because when you have a baby, I will show you the video, and you put your hand inside, your finger inside a baby's hands, oh, the baby will grasp. But with this comes an emotional response. The baby's like, ooh, is it danger? Is it good? Is it not? Oh, I gotta hold on, I'm not sure what is going on. So this is a big element of the Dr. Masgutova's conception and description of reflexes. It comes with an activation of the stress, HPA axis stress response with some hormonal change. So it is a chemical aspect of the circuit, reflex circuit. Okay, so put this in image here. Think about the triangle, all right? Here, the sensory. I'm going to show you a video. The sensory will be pushing at the bottom of the toes of a baby. And we're going to look at the motor response. So first video, we have the plantar grasp. I'm pressing the bottom of the foot, and oops, you see the toes going into flexion. The sensory was pressing the bottom of the feet. It went to the brain said, oh, I recognize this when we press on the bottom of my toes. I'm supposed to curl my toes. We had the motor output. Okay, so those are 3 reflexes for the feet, and you're going to see 3 different sensory at 3 different areas of the foot with 3 different responses. This is called the Babinski. Babinski, people usually are familiar with this. So Babinski is on the outside of the foot. You stroke, poops, and it's a very specific response with an internal rotation of the foot. The toes are opening. I will show you one more time. So here we go. Stroke the outside from bottom to top. Oops. And you have this very precisely described response. And then in this one, we're going to go with the inside part of the foot. It's called the foot tendon guard. Oops. And this is not the same. If you pay attention, now the ankle went up and the toes, not yet. There's a not perfect response there. Still, those little toes are not, and then the last one is even better. So, 3 examples of 3 foot reflexes and 3 different responses. Now, what can happen? You have your baby, you press the bottom of the toes, and instead of going with the proper programmed genetic code, the baby responds that way. You're like, okay, in that circuit, there is a glitch somewhere because we gave a very specific sensory stimulation and we didn't have the programmed response. So we know that we can do something to try to restore this. Now, this was on babies. And then so what? You do sensory stimulation and you have a different response. And the parent says, and then what? What does that mean? Well, every reflex has very specific tasks. This is just an example. The reflex I showed you later will help a child to put a proper placement of their foot when they're standing, when they're walking. So, on the first picture, you see how the foot collapses inward, the heel is very deviated, we call that flat foot, you can call pronated feet, but it is not a proper alignment. Anatomically speaking, this is not good. So, this baby is 14 months old, and now the mom says, I'm concerned, I see my baby's feet, and he's like collapsing. What am I supposed to do? And we go, well, there is some issues with the foot reflexes. But if this little 18, 15-month-old was assessed at the time of being a baby, the problem with this collapse, it's a problem with Babinski and with foot tendon guard. And most likely, the baby would have not had the right response there. But if we saw this there, that was a 2-3 weeks old baby, 4 months, and it's much easier to fix this than when the baby is 18 months old or 15 months old. And now we have to do more work. Tiptoe walker. Tiptoe walker, the foot is down. Those babies do not have a proper foot tendon guard. Foot tendon guard was the third reflex where the ankle goes this way. So we could have detected this. We could have identified this way earlier. Work with a tiptoe walker at 3, 4, 5 years old, this is a lot of work. It's never too late. But if you have a baby that does not have the proper response within the first 6 months of life, you're going to fix this much, much faster. This is an example now of a 2.5-year-old with more severe disability for sure, but that's the result of non-integrated foot reflexes. And this little girl, we worked with the Masgutova method, and it was pretty restored without bracing, because we worked with the brain. So it is not late, but it took a long time. Okay, so those were examples with only 3 reflexes. Dr. Masgutova defines about 30 reflexes, more, but 30 main reflexes. That you see some of the pictures there. And you can imagine what kind of information we get from the foot reflex, from the hand. So when you do now a whole panel with the 30 reflexes, you get some serious information. And this is what is not completely understood in the world of reflexes. It's all over the internet, you have tons of things, but who really gets the true meaning of the reflex? And especially when you have an overview of all the reflexes. So this is different groups of reflexes, but the bowel crawling, fear paralysis, all those, and each one of them has extremely specific tasks with very, very precise function. And if all together are well developed and matured, then we are pretty functional human beings. And the more non-integrated, the more challenges we will have in life. Okay, so reflexes is a complicated topic. Why? Because if you saw my video of the baby with the reflexes, and if I go here inside, let's take Babinski, and you have a response on a 2-day-old infant, this is one thing. If you do this on a 2-week-old infant, you're going to expect different things. If you do this on a 2-month-old, we want and we will expect another response. If you do this on a 10-year-old, you stroke the outside and the foot goes like this. This is not proper. So we need to know the whole dynamics, we call this dynamic of the reflex. And we have to know at what age, what response we're expecting. But if we have a child that is older but responds like a baby, we know that there is some issues there. So again, simplify journey of a reflex. They first appear when? Before, after? Before birth, in utero. And then, very generally speaking, there are some variations, but from 0 to 4 months, they are what we call unconditioned, completely automatic, programmed, it does not matter. Means, if you have a little baby that's in an orphanage and was never stimulated, was in a crib, this is reality sometimes, but 0 to 4 months you were checking their reflexes, you should expect a response if the baby was born, of course, with neurotypical maturation during pregnancy, you will see the reflex. It doesn't matter. And you cannot say, well, but this baby wasn't exposed to this. This baby was never showed this or that. It's genetically programmed. Now, if you are above 4 to 6 months and up, we're talking about conditioned reflex. And that has to do with the exposure, with the training, with the learning, with the motivation, and so on. So, first 4 months, completely automatic. It's the moment where the coding is like strengthening and happening, and it will serve mostly for protection. 4 to 6 months, big transition stage. And then after 6 to 12 months, now we're talking about conditioned reflex. I will show you this in videos, because for some of you, it might not make so much sense, but I want you to make sense of this. After a year, those reflexes disappear, they don't disappear, they become integrated and they become skills. So let's look at what it is in image. First, I have one word to say about integration. The method is called sensory motor reflex integration. And you're going to see other things on general literature or on the website. You're going to see the word inhibition sometimes. This is not supported by the concept of the Masgutova method. We're talking about integration. For those reasons, reflexes do not disappear. Okay, Vygotsky was saying this in 1930. The reflex will continue to work together with the higher level of the brain structure. And they will be transferring part of their function to younger and newer center. So, our reflexes are staying with us for the rest of our lives, and when we need them, they're going to resurface and come to the rescue if we have threat, if we are sick, if we have accident, injury, and so on. This was a very simple way to explain the integration versus the inhibition, but in our work, it does not make sense to say, I'm going to inhibit primary reflex, or I'm going to integrate primitive reflex. We're talking about different concepts. So if you want to know more, I really invite you to look at the website and our classes. Now, think about this diagram here. Okay, I'm taking you between 0 to 4 months when the reflex is completely automatic. And I'm talking about the bowel crawling. You all know about bowel crawling. If you have this baby within the first month of life, if you touch the bottom of their feet, they're escaping the stimuli, and you're going to see this amazing reciprocal pattern response, mainly in the lower limbs at this moment. This is unconditioned automatic response. Doesn't matter if the baby is from Asia, from Africa, from the US, doesn't matter if the baby was not stimulated in an orphanage, it's given. And this is how it looks like on a 37 weeks gestation infant here. In the hands of Dr. Masgutova. And you see left, right, left, right, left, right. Is that reciprocal movement here? Okay. And I said mostly in the lowers, but if you really paid attention, you notice that there was something going on in the upper body too, and even the head was kind of, but this was pretty advanced response for a 37 week. You see? It happens in utero because this baby is not even at full term. Okay, so I just showed you here, this part. Automatic, unconditioned. Let's move on to a later stage. What's happening with this bowel crawl reflex, completely reflexive? Okay, now we have a 2.5-month-old baby. Okay? It's still going to be unconditioned because we're not transitioning yet. What age does the transition happen? 4 to 6 months. This is 2.5. But you're already going to see some maturation of this bowel crawling response. Okay? Here we go, little baby from Sweden that's doing amazingly. And if someone tells you, oh, 2.5-month-old baby, what are you talking about? They don't even show the beginning of crawling. Check this out, because we have to prove that our work is based on this reality. Okay, here we go. 2.5-month-old. Now, you see the beautiful propelling from the ground. Reciprocity. We had this with the 37-weeker. Now, look what is going on in the upper body. And the head is getting active in this work. By the way, she covered some ground there. She truly moved. I mean, this is 2.5-month-old baby. You have to just keep this in mind, because people that say infants do not crawl, it is reflexive. This is automatic. Okay, the baby was not taught to do this. She was born with this gift. Look at this, how beautiful. Pinsky, it's there. It is the wonder of nature, truly speaking. Okay, so this was showing you we were still here, 0 to 4 months, pure automaticity, unconditioned. Okay, next, we have a 7-month-old baby. So we are after transition, means Now, it is not completely unconditioned automatic. It's conditioned. Means it comes with some of exposure, training, learning, motivation. Because this little cookie sees some toys here. She's got a good reason to be wanting to get there. Okay, so here she goes. She's a famous MNRI baby too. And you can see that reciprocity now between upper and lower with beautiful handwriting. What else is going on there? Vision, big time. She has a mission there. She's going for something. Let's just watch Miss Luna again because she's giving a beautiful demonstration. Right, left. Upper, opposite with lower. Upper right with left, lower. Upper left with lower right. And she knows that she's videotaped. She wants to make sure her daddy is videotaping. Okay, so this is, let's go back to our diagram here. Did you see where we are? We are here. After the transition, complete maturation, higher level. So many other structures are involved in this. Now we're going to look at the last part of the journey of a reflex here. Bower crawling becomes creeping. Creeping in our language means on hands and knees. Crawling, it depends on the country, but it's belly crawling. So, 11-month-old, now this bower crawling reflex becomes a skill. And a skill means that it has some thinking, some planning, some inner control, and so on. And this little guy is going hands and knees with this nice cross-lateral length, going after something. He knows where he's going. He's going to make a turn. He can go to different orientation. He can pause. He can come back and forth. He's managing some pushing with his hand and still doing the crawling. Now, this is a skill. This is good for an 11-month-old. It is not going to happen if the bower crawling was not properly turned on an automatic level. We can teach the babies, we can help them, but this level of smoothness, integration, will be optimal if the reflex at the automatic period is there. So, I hope this helps you to understand this kind of dynamic, what we call the dynamic, that you have the reflex coming, it's automatic, we have a transition, it becomes conditioned, and then it is a skill. What else here? You see walking on hands and knees, but walking takes the opposite. You see, if I go with my right foot forward, my left arm goes. So, babies that are skipping crawling, babies that never had a good bower crawling, later the walk may have some sort of deviation, may not be smooth or as efficient as we wanted this. Studies are pretty overwhelming that they were interviewing parents of children in preschool that had learning disability, learning difficulty. And when you ask the parents, did your baby do belly crawling? Oh no, my baby skipped this. She went from sitting to standing, from sitting to standing. So this is a big deal as far as learning skills. Those days we hear pediatricians say, oh, don't worry if your baby didn't do belly crawling. Who cares when you're 30 years old? Who cares if you were crawling? Mm-hmm. From medical doctors. We cannot allow this kind of statement. This is not the reality. When you go according to reflex concept, skipping crawling does not make sense at all. And if it's not happening naturally, we have tools to help those babies to get this level as soon as possible. Now, I want to show you another reflex here. That's called spine Gallant. Here you have the typical chronology. It is not so important for you, but when I was telling you, every reflex has specific function. This particular reflex will help the baby to be born, will help the spine, the posture, and so on. Now, how does it look like? It's another example for you to really understand. You have a 2-week-old infant. The spinal collant is triggered when you stroke the side of the spine. And the response is the side that you stroke is going to escape the stimuli and will go with flexion on that side. The leg comes out, the head comes, and so on. So this is a response. It's a little bit hyper response. This baby was a NICU baby. So has a very high protective poops. And you see, go there, poops. But this is the biomechanic of spinal collant. For a 2-week-old baby, it's a bit too reactive. We don't want this so hard. Anyway, so now, here, you have a 10-year-old boy with diagnosis of autism. And I'm checking his spinal collant, same stimuli. There. And I want you to hear, if you can. I don't even touch him, he anticipates.
You want to do it to me? Okay.
Very reactive, 10 years old. He's checking me. Did you see, like, before, this is really, I want you to look at this. Before I touched here, there, look. He was here, and I was not even touching. That's very hyper. So, what is going on here? This 10-year-old has a response of a newborn with this reflex. And that's not good, because this child perceived this as very, almost maybe painful for him, very reactive. There is something going on his back, and his entire body is responding. This is not necessary to go in that state of response. Dr. Masgutova has done thousands of assessments of children in the spectrum. I don't know the exact number, but maybe 90% of them have a non-integrated spinal gallant. We know this. Many other conditions, when you do those profiles, thousands of assessments shows that children with learning disability don't have an integrated spinal column and so on. So when we see this, not at 10 years old, but as a baby, because by 2, maybe 3 years old, you should not have a reactive response, then we can take action and do something about this. Now here, you have a 3-year-old, and I'm going to check the left side first. That's what we want to see. It was quick, but look on the left, not much response. That's integrated. It doesn't mean it's gone. Remember, it doesn't disappear. Look on the right side, she is still reactive. So, left, it's decent. Oops. You see that? So now we have asymmetry, and we need to work. Look at the posture. There is like asymmetry in the posture. This shoulder is much higher than the other. Spinal gallant, one of the tasks is posture. Look at this posture. He's posturing like an old man. He's like, he has no control. He's so low muscle tone. Spinal gallant is responsible for this. So this is the power of what reflexes can bring. And this is a baby in the NICU that's not even full term, and you can work on spinal collant at that level already. This is to show early intervention. And babies in the NICU will have a very reactive spinal collant because everything is so threatening. They have to survive, they have to protect themselves. It's a rough environment for babies. But there is no age to wait to start working. Okay, so maybe we can take a 5-minute break if you need to go to the restroom, and then we'll go with the second part with early intervention.
And here on the back, salad, please, welcome.
There is salad on the back that you may grab, and I don't mind if you eat while I talk.